Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Walk, Talk, and Rock. I am still a little bit sick or under the weather, but nevertheless, we still got to walk. So it'll be a little short one. Today's topic is going to be about Star Citizen. Which I know is one of everybody's favorite games that have invested a lot of money into it. Ever since it did start, I believe, a Kickstarter or whatever source of crowdfunding. And we're just going to talk about the genre and the game in general and the recent controversy, which I think everybody has heard about. It's a really big game that's, I think, has poured almost a billion of dollars into. I'll just bring up this article right here. Right here on Star Citizen. You know, this was just recently this month right here. Star Citizen developer stream goes horribly off the rails, creating further distress via the developer and the people that are really invested into the game. And to get a rough idea of how much money they've put into the game, it's definitely over $1 billion, like I said. So this is going to be a really quick one. So in this Walk, Talk, and Rock episode, I'll be talking about in each section why we love spaceships in space games, and how these people actually took advantage of people that actually like these kind of games. Most notably, a really notorious game for spending a lot of money as well is Eve Online. Eve Online is basically a real-time strategy game that is online, and you control fleet basically, and you just have guilds, and it's really nice. It's a really good game. Like, it's something that if you're rich and you want to show off your big fleet and stuff like that, it's really one of those games. And in the next section, we're going to talk about Chris Roberts and Cloud Imperium Games. He has done a lot of guest appearances, some talks, and he really knows the right words to say for people to actually pour in a lot of money into creating this game. But I feel like it is kind of overdeveloped. But maybe I'm wrong. And now we have how Star Citizen became a $1 billion project. I'm just going to quickly go over how they raise millions of dollars and still continue to get investors hooked on the idea, because there's a lot of incentive for people to give them money, and they're going to give you like special ships and stuff like that, or like your own planet or something. They had really good perks, which really sound enticing at the time, but it's kind of feeling like it's unfolding like Ashes of Creation, and we already know how that fell apart, sadly. There's a lot of con artists. Like, people were telling me, like, I feel like the biggest con artists are in the USA, honestly. Even though we compare ourselves to like China and India, that's why USA got all the money. And the fourth section will be what Star Citizen is today, versus what they promised many years ago. And we'll take a look at that and see how that differs, and probably talk about the opinions of how the players reacted and what the community thinks about the game in general, and if it's meeting their standards or if they feel scammed or whatever. And in the last section, we'll talk about more way of a segue into the headline that I just showed recently, and the disaster of a lot of these game companies that are literally low-key swindling these people. Because at this point, I would think that they would have at least a playable product, which they do. But where are all the experienced developers at? I'm not sure. Maybe it's the team. Maybe this game is doomed to fail. like this rocket company called Astra. That was one really controversial one. Literally just copied other companies that wanted to be like SpaceX and Blue Origin, took it public, and it literally failed. You know, forgot the guy's name, Chris. Like, oh shit, they got like the same name. Yeah, Astra was a rocket company based in the United States, and that shit literally felt like a scam. Like it looked like they were doing work, but I think behind the scenes there was no work being done. And I think a lot of their stuff was just borrowed. All right, so let's get into it. So a lot of the things about Star Citizen that people really liked was how they were going to show just how immersive it was. And at this time and era, spaceship games like EVE Online, even I think Star Wars Online, Star Wars Republic. What else? What other space game was there? Just space in general, because we also had like StarCraft, Stellaris, and other space games. And I think they want to really show that people cared, because a lot of people really like Star Wars and Star Trek, and the franchise was really popular. And this is also where we also had No Man's Sky, you know, by Hello Games. Literally the biggest gaming comeback of history. If I had to write the biggest comeback of gaming history, like in terms of developer wise, you know, Hello Games and No Man's Sky, wow, definitely wins that award. That game made a complete recovery, and I respect that team. You know, maybe they were really inexperienced, but they really showed that they can execute on their ideas and plans. I mean, compared to the Star Citizen people. So why do space games hit different? Space games sell something different from almost any other game. They have the illusion of, I mean, they have ownership of, like, you can own a planet if it was well thought and designed and programmed well. Multiple ships, a crew, and all that. And just the idea of being in space and conquering other planets and having massive space battles is just incredible, right? Because you've seen shows like Star Wars, Star Trek, and I'm sure there's plenty of others that I've never heard of. Andromeda? Or is that show? I'm not too sure. And I was really drawn into it as well. You know, I had my fair share of playing a lot of space games. But I mostly played like the single player ones, because a lot of the ones that I mentioned, like Eve, they're kind of pay to win. I mean, you could play them without spending that much, but you're not gonna really get anywhere unless you're in a really big guild, and that's hard to come by these days because everybody's an elitist. And if you don't know what the elitist is, it's just basically people who gatekeep, because they have the I got mine mentality, you get your own mentality, whatever, which doesn't really work that way, because, you know, if you actually were a parent, you wouldn't tell that to your kids, and they would just be suffering. Everybody would just be suffering. That's all. So we go to that point, you know. They show the gameplay, they have this idea, you get the trailer for Star Citizen, and you're just drawn into it because it's so brand new. They advertise it like vehicles, like certain housing, inventory, workplaces, crafting, and all that, social hubs. And people didn't merely see the ship, they'd be like, oh my god, that's literally a way of life. I don't know why I'm sweating so much. I barely did anything. It's just really hot. And I also was drawn into it. Like, I was going to, before, like, donate my lunch money to Star Citizen, but something in my gut told me, like, well, my gut's never right all the time, But I was just gonna wait for the full release if it ever fully released. And the major difference that this one has is like it has Wing Commander and it had very cinematic military space combat. I think they were inspired by the shows I mentioned. There's pilots, carriers, dogfighting, story, characters, and you can totally build this whole idea. And then recently down this line, we had this game Starfield, right, by Bethesda, I believe, and that one really didn't do well. But we also had the franchise called Destiny, which did fantastically well. But that was more so focused on the character aspect, more so than the spaceships and stuff like that. And then we started realizing that making a space game is not that difficult. You know, we have like RNG, I forgot what that white noise generated worlds, and then all this crazy stuff. I forgot all what the techniques name, but you can watch. So there's like this famous programmer on YouTube that talks about all these techniques that are really popular in game dev, and people use these techniques to create procedurally generated worlds for planets and stuff like that. It's crazy too because even games such as Starbound have these kind of mechanics, and that game is another one that I recommend if you really enjoy the space genre. You know, Starbound is like your cheap version. You also have Avorion, which is another great space game that you can play with your friends. You also have, like I said, Stellaris, and there's so many other more space games that I probably missed. But these are just some of the ones that I've played personally. And the cool thing about Star Citizen, they made it like so that it had its own player defined economy. You know, there was trade, different types of systems that really gave it the political vibe, factions, exploration, obviously many types of ships and combat. But what really reeled people in to this game is the ships. They're all kind of like paywalled. So like the more money you donate, obviously the better ship that you get. And I think a lot of people that were really looking for the next EVE Online came from EVE Online, and a lot of players or whales from EVE Online were already whales, so they decided to pour so much money into Star Citizen, which at this point it literally has to be like all planned. Like the government has to be okay with this too. Like the government probably knows. Like there's just no way people would allow this company to amass $1 billion of donations and not have a workable product. Like this all has to be planned under the hood. There's a lot of corruption going on. You know, back in the days, or especially in other countries, a lot of the money laundering and corruption is done with construction projects. But now, I guess these same group of people, like-minded people, have taken this kind of corruption, money laundering scam into video game development. Which I don't blame them. They think a lot of people that play video games are not intelligent enough to really determine who's a con artist professional or just a plain scammer, or they're really the same category. You know, I wouldn't put them under the CEO or investor or whatever. And they're just a professional con artist, right? Like, would you put at this point? Would you think that this person is like a respectable CEO? Like, I don't know. You already gave them more than honestly. If the CEO isn't really performing for like 3 years, I would pretty much say that they're basically a con artist at this point, or a scammer. So you should definitely watch out. Watch your money right there. There's a lot of people that fall for this kind of stuff. But anyways, I digress. We talked about all these other ones: EVE Online, No Man's Sky, X4, Foundations, Starfield. And so, as we think, if you could own one type of ship in a space game, I guess what kind of ship would you choose? And that was basically what a lot of the community polls were for Star Citizen. They would make the ship, you know, probably hire some person from India to make the ship on the cheap, because there's no way these ships that they design are worth millions of dollars. As you know that, especially with the use of AI, and AI was already in use in some shape or form back then, even before it was popularized by Google and OpenAI and whatever. AI has existed since even the early 2000s. Everybody, like I hate to break it to you, but popular sites, especially dating sites back then, like Ashley Madison, and I don't know. There was an article about all of these, and they were all in conjunction with like the FBI, the CIA, you know, NSA, whatever. Who fucking cares? Honestly, they were all in on this, and it was all under the table. So you can research yourself. It's publicly available information, unless they really took it out. Who knows? But when you see about Cloud Imperium Games, you could probably find similar people that were in the groups, especially among the investor circle, okay? And this is the most important part, you know, you want to look at the core investors. Because while a lot of these investor companies or hedge funds sound reputable and whatnot, you know, behind the scenes, they are actually doing really bad things that normal people would not consider or wouldn't have the, what's that word? Privilege to do so, which kind of sucks. Because I thought this is a free market, but apparently it's not a free market because everybody else is limited to all these laws and regulations that create monopolies for all these other companies that really just took advantage of everything and decided to pull that ladder up behind you, you know, like that famous pull your bootstraps or whatever. So as we go into 2012, right? Cloud Imperium Games was founded by Chris Roberts and Ortwin Fremont. And that guy is mostly an attorney. And that right there is already a red flag. You know, when your co-founder, in my opinion, is an expert in the law and stuff like that, or is tied to any type of investment fund, hedge fund, capital investment, venture capital, whatever, bro, you are walking into a scam. 100%. Like I can't believe it, because they're gonna have this kind of thing where they deliver and then under deliver, just waste a lot of money and say they have to pay developers this. But little do you know that all of the people and the work that has been done was outsourced and hired contractors, you know, and they probably had shitty hours or whatever. I mean, I can digress, you know, there could be something. But most of the time that I've read from even other startups and whatnot, you know, a lot of them fail under this kind of reason. And I wouldn't really put it past myself, because there were so many. And it's very evident, you know, during the recent crypto phase, you know, with tokens and all that. Literally every token out there is a scam, which is kind of crazy. You know, just people out here telling other people to work hard, and then they just scam you. Unbelievable. And I think that's what you're seeing with Star Citizen. You know, it's like the sunken cost fallacy. Some people want to believe that it takes time, but come on, let's be realistic here. A lot of AAA games only take, at most, 3 to 5 years. And even Square Enix, they develop games, and the sizable team is like 100 per studio, and they're able to deliver really quality games. So is it the people that we're trusting? You know, it's like, I'm not going to be racist or anything, or just white developers just not good enough compared to the Asian developers? Who knows? You know, you can convince me that, but when I look at the statistically, that would show like a really stark contrast. So now we have Cloud Imperium Games, and they had this whole white paper or research paper, how they're going to implement it. And then we have like everything, right? Web services, how everything was going to work. Then you have your reporting people, Chris Roberts, CEO, Creative Vision. Then you have Sandy Roberts, which I literally think they are related. So that's already another red flag in my opinion. Conflict of interest. And then you have Ben Wishweiser, Turbulent co-founder, who became like the CTO. And then you have Jared Huckabee, recognizable community development. And these sound like really strong people. But I mean, we don't really know their work ethic. And I don't even know if they had other successful projects that they did on their own. It's easy to make all these assumptions about somebody, especially if they're already rich and they have something to gain. So, can they build a studio, and where's the game? And that question becomes a lot louder once the number attached to the project has 10 digits. Once we're spending millions and millions of dollars, how come the game is just it's there, but it's not complete? You know what I'm saying? It's like the puzzle pieces are all there, but the picture is not. So here we go. We're going to talk about how Star Citizen became a billion-dollar game and how it's still continuing development. And we have no idea when it's going to come out, to be honest. At this point, it's just a lot of speculation, a lot of just news for people. But everybody knows that it's probably a project that's destined to fail and you don't get any money back. It sucks. So 2012 was when Star Citizen was basically starting. I mean, and 2012 was a pretty ripe year. We just had like League of Legends and all that. So I don't really know why all of a sudden people started flocking to this company that I think doesn't really have a strong track record itself. But they had people that looked strong. But there were so many things that were red flags already, like I said. But people just had to find out and see. I think it was people were just being taken advantage of the knowledge gap on what they knew and how these people are gonna break the law and basically take your money for free. So they started on Kickstarter. They had like Wing Commander, Privateer, and Freelancer as some of those tiers, I think. And it was an initial success. Back then Kickstarter was where you would fund games. There's some really successful projects that were crowdfunded there, and they even put your name in the credits and everything. And yeah, that's very interesting and whatnot. But the problem is, even after the success, they kept crowdfunding. I guess they really felt that, oh my god, we can just milk these guys. Kind of like, I don't want to mention this one developer. At the end of the day, we're just speculating and observations, okay? There's no hate or anything. We're just talking about what happened. Popular developers like Yonder Dev, and then later we have Ashes of Creations, right? These people promise a lot of things. They do deliver. Not saying that they don't deliver. But there were so many times when they could have gotten help. And I don't know, maybe it's miscommunication, mismanagement, or something. But things just didn't turn out well, which I don't understand, to be honest. I honestly think now that maybe some of us, or some of them, are just kind of mentally ill, maybe. I'm not sure, because I mean, I would like help. But you always have to find the right people to help you, or it just goes more downhill. Which makes sense, I guess. I guess at this point, they got to keep going until they make it. So you had ship pledges. People can buy and pledge for ships. Some were super expensive. Like, I'm talking about the thousands of dollars. Like, damn, you could buy a new car with that. But you know, if you're a billionaire or a millionaire with a passive income of $1 million every year, you know, it doesn't matter. And believe me, there's actually there's people, yeah, in this world that make passive income of 6 figures, sorry, 7 figures doing nothing. I mean, not exactly doing nothing, but they work like maybe 1 or 2 hours a day, and they make so much money, which I'll never be able to experience. But that's just how it is. You know, I'm not part of that class system. So, why did this work when they were calculating ships? I guess people really found that. Oh, now there's types of ships. There's mining ships, salvage ships, cargoes, fighters, motherships, carriers, exploration, luxury, capital ship. So you had all these different kinds of ships. You know, they divided them into classes, and they all put a price tag on them. And depending if you were rich or not, you could have spent more money to get all these ships or like the best ship out of everything. Star Citizen's greatest product is not the game itself, but it was the ships and the anticipation of using those ships. You know, that's crazy, right? Like all these people basically like paying for something that doesn't exist. I wish I could do that, right? I wish anybody could do that. I wish I could sell something to people that doesn't exist yet and be paid millions and billions of dollars, but I don't have that reputation. Apparently, these guys do. So after that, you know, in May 2026, which is this year, the project has crossed over $1 billion in community funding. Like, holy crap, guys. You give $1 billion to these people, but not $1 billion to your homeboy right here. I'm just kidding. I could use a easy 5 mil right here, guys. You know, 5 mil is all I ask for, and I'll be trying to develop something good. But I digress. Everybody needs money these days. But let's not take it too seriously right here. So 14 years though. I feel like this is almost tied with a GTA 6 almost. 14 years, $1 billion, still seeking funding. Not even, I don't think it's even in past alpha access training. It's not even 1.0. But it has a fair perspective. You know, there is a way you can play the game. You can walk around your ship. I think there's some sort of gameplay, but none of it is working correctly. And this gives us the fair perspective, you know. Had years of spending money with like salaries, offices, and all that infrastructure, operations. But you know what would have been really good? What they should have done? They should have made like I'm pretty sure they made devlogs, like what every company does, you know, to keep the investors invested. They're showing them that they're making progress. But they should have done that like maybe quarterly. I'm not even too sure. Let's look at the Star Citizen YouTube channel. I don't even know if they have a YouTube channel, but we'll see. So here we go. Here's a Star Citizen YouTube channel. You know, let's see how many. They have almost 2,000 videos. See, 13 years ago, they have all this, right? Yeah, oh my god, they do have things going on, but like, I just can't believe it. Like, it really looks promising, right? You know, I just feel like the people, I think the people just got high on community funding, honestly. Like, they realized this could be their job. Honestly, this is an easy job, you know? Working on a product, but never deliver it. Because they all know once they finish and deliver the final product, they're not going to get any more money. So they probably decided to keep this going. But you can see, like, they really did have stuff. They have a town hall. They have 2015. Like they kept this show going. And at this point, I don't even think it's about the game anymore. It seems like a reality TV show, if you ask me. No, a reality TV show about making $1 billion game. That's what Star Citizen is. That's the real content right there. Because $1 million and still alpha, that's crazy. The projects had expectations to finish the minimum viable product in 2014. Only 2 years, but that didn't happen. It kept going and going for some reason. And they expanded the scope. They had feature creep versus innovation, which a lot of early game developers have. You know, new technology comes out, then you throw away your current project and you start over again with the new technology. And I guess they just have to stick to it. That's why it's better, in my idea, to not rely on a game engine and make all of your code modular into libraries so it's easy to extend, if that even makes sense. So at what point does ambition stop being impressive and start becoming poor project management? That's a question for you to answer. You know, what year do you think, if you really follow Star Citizen as closely, what year did you think that you noticed a change in management and the game or the development wasn't really focused on delivering? You know, things started became chaotic. Because there are some atmospheres that I know of, like even like Ubisoft. The most notable one is like Telltale Games, and Bannerlord, the Warband, Mountain Blade. You know the Mountain Blade series. They've had. I thought those people paid the developers well, but they don't really get paid well, and I feel really bad being a huge fan of that game, and the people don't even pay them that well. And nowadays, a lot of game companies obviously need money, so that's how it usually starts out. You know, you're just a young 20-year-old, and once you hit 30, all the passion is gone, and you see the reality of life, right? And at that point, you just like, I just want to get out of this as quickly as possible. And that's for you adults need to decide. You know, you all shape the way we live. You know, life is a sandbox. There's no one way to live life. You can either believe money will set you free, or you can set yourself free by believing that money isn't going to do anything for you. Like, the world is free. Everything here is your oyster. And if someone tells you otherwise, they're just a big ass liar. But here's a discussion about Star Citizen that became unfair. People talk like there was no game, but you can actually play some stuff. And we're gonna just talk about what other people say. A lot of people say that it's a scam. You know, even though it's playable, it doesn't have any of the features that they promised from their roadmap, especially from the Kickstarter. You know, you can really only, you can just fly your ship, you can walk around your ship, you can fight other ships, you know, initiate battles, but there's nothing complicated about the game as far as what was promised. And some of the impressive parts is like you can physically wake up, you can walk, you can transit, board ship, fly, leave the atmosphere, jump systems, and somewhere else, exit your ship and fight. But that's literally every game these days, y'all. That's like the basic shit of every Star space game. Like in Hello No Man's Sky, you can do all this stuff already, and so much more. Even Starfield, Destiny has better. And I mean, hell, even the Halo series during this time when it was still popular. So it's like none of this shit is surprising, to be honest. It's all very basic, and that really doesn't set anything apart other than having Star in its name, which could be like Star Trek, Star Wars, Star whatever, Star Citizen. So one of the most important parts is the server. It dreams that there's one enormous server, but it isn't hosted by a monolithic style or data center. It's all spread in like clusters around the world. And I think that was one of the more interesting things. And they talked about combining with persistent systems and turning it into like a massive scale MMO, which sounds great. And I too would believe in my idea and see it through. But even I would have to settle down a little bit with what I can make first at a smaller scale before I would make it into a big scale. I guess the people were really over ambitious and really are trying to make a perfect game, which they should make the game first and then build upon it. And that's what all the game people know. Like you can't put the toppings on without a pizza, or like without the flour and dough. You need a strong foundation. Or you just get carried away. And this is where a lot of the things become extremely difficult in scale for Star Citizen and to burn through billions of dollars. Just like they must be paying the C-suite a lot, man. He probably making like 10 million a year and not delivering any sort of product. That's not even worth that much. And they had a patch at 4.8.1. It added 385 asteroid defense missions. But players reported that they were always crashing, and every time they would go into the hangar, there was just a lot of bugs. They have said they added all these features, but I don't think anybody has successfully played the game the way it's supposed to be played. And then this is where things just started falling apart. They had different kind of sub games of it. I think Squadron 42. And Chris Roberts returned directly to the Wing Commander style storytelling. I guess it's part of how the game is played and all that. So like Squadron 42 might actually be the most important product they have released, because eventually Star Citizen needs to prove that the technology can produce something. And I guess it was proof that they do know. I'm not gonna have I don't have hope for them actually, but I'll just be nice and say there's some hope in them. But honestly, I think it's just red flags when most of the co-founders and C-suite are a bunch of lawyers and no proven track record of actually delivering their own product for their own self. So now that brings us to the last part of this Walk Talk and Rock. I'm just gonna go over it real quick. It's, I said I'm sick. I think that's why I'm sweating, because I kind of have a fever. So the disaster development stream that we showed before actually showed like how a person is supposed to play the game, and there was a lot of bugs in there, and then another developer came down to shut down the live stream, which is very awkward because they were saying they are very proud of the work and they can't wait to release this quote unquote gameplay to the other players. And why does this matter? Because they had raised so much money for this bad demo, $1 billion, and like $1 billion is life changing. And I guess that $1 billion is laundered through multiple things. So there has to be another sovereignty that is involved with Cloud Imperium Games behind the scenes. And there's only a few groups of these kind of people that I would know personally. One is Israel, and then there's some other ones, probably part of India, and probably hidden ones in China or Asia, or Luxembourg, or the Cayman Islands, or one of the Dutch territories or something. And there's another one. There's another like tax haven similar to the Cayman Islands that have these kind of very sophisticated like company scams. I don't know how to explain it, but you can read a lot about those. This is public knowledge. You probably never heard of it because you're either too busy with your life, like working, raising your family, but this is really common in business. And I don't like it. I think it's just bad. Like, come on, y'all. Like, do you need to think to yourself that it's not bad and you're like, what, freaking 40 years old, man? That's kind of shit. So we still have this alpha that's still going for the first headline, right? Is the disastrous developer stream. Then the second one is alpha 4.10. It's still kind of hard garbage, and it's still being tested. And it's basically like a sandbox where they're trying to have the sandbox, but man, they still have patches going on, and who even knows what the code looks like at this point. Headline 3, the 1 billion milestone. They hit this huge crowdfunding goal of $1 billion, and it's just like, well, I don't see the 1 billion at all. Like, I guess they all spent that money. They probably spent that money on something. Who knows? Paying their workers or the C-suite. We should see how much the CEO and the other people were making, especially the lawyer. He's probably making a shit ton of money. The most worrying thing about Star Citizen might not be that its funding model failed. It might be that the funding model worked too well. In this case, these people are getting paid for 14 years on product that's not being delivered. And then you have like the stage is closing. Basically, I think that they think they built something complete. They're going to be like, see, the game failed, guys. Our game sucks. No one's playing it. And yeah, it's literally just a scam. It's just ashes of creation. They literally keep writing this. It's like investing in a company, most notably with like Bill Ackman and VRX Pharmaceuticals. I believe that guy invested in that company for like 10 years, only for it to just fail. So that means the leadership really didn't. It's literally just a scam. They're not taking it too seriously. Same thing with the one that I mentioned, like Astra, maybe like Rivian. There's a lot of examples. A lot of cancer biotech companies that say they're going to cure cancer. You invested in any of them, they all failed. They're all just meant to be scams, sadly. So I could see the case for why this is happening to Star Citizen. Like I said, they have the lawyers and everything. They're more lawyered up than they probably have more lawyers than developers in this company, to be honest. And that's just true for a lot of American companies. You can see this trend. If you're really into the market, really into the economic and macroeconomic business cycle. It's just really sad. I thought this country was about freedom and having integrity, transparency, and honesty, but it's none of those three. Very disappointed. So I digress into this final verdict. Star Citizen could be a scam, maybe. Who knows? Maybe if enough people call them out, maybe they'll actually turn the game around and be like, all right, guys, we were gonna scam you, but not anymore. We'll show you. No, these people are literally heartless. They don't think about. They don't give a shit if they're giving them their money. So the players saw the things, the studio grow, deadlines are disappearing, systems are all broken. Maybe they're gonna fix it. Then they're gonna have the final show, live servers, and then end of service in within a year, just like Ashes of Creation or whatever. But they've been doing this for years. They're experts at being con artists. There's even a book about con artists in the business world, and it's so, I don't know what the word. I don't like it. I just hate it. Why do we support these people? They're literally mentally ill. They need to go to the psych ward so they don't have to get a job like that, because we don't need that kind of shit. I feel like that's really a waste of time, waste of resources, and a waste of money, obviously. So Star Citizen no longer has to prove that the dream is possible. It has to prove that the dream can be finished at this point. And I feel like they should just start taking out loans and actually using their own assets as collateral, or just go bankrupt. At this point, they should stop asking the community for money. It's too much of a liability, in my opinion. Well, what do you think? Do you think Star Citizen is actually a scam? Do you think Cloud Imperial Games is going to pay investors for the damages it caused? Because at the end of the day, you're just paying for software or a game. It's all digital. There's nothing physically that you can get. It's just code. Maybe they'll finally use AI. Maybe they can use AI to help them finish their game. They can use Claude Fable or Codex or whatever. And that's it. That's it. Oh, I just talked too much, and I'm tired and sick. And that'll be it for today's Walk Talk and Rock show. That's it for Star Citizen. I'll probably not even talk about this game again order this company again unless they have released the final product. Because maybe I'll try the game out. If it's gonna be cheap, I don't know. Maybe it's gonna be like $100 just to play, or maybe they will do their subscription-based service, subscription as a service. No idea. But until then, I'll see you in the next Walk Talk and Rock. See ya.